libraries, and community centers.
Do your part to lower overdose deaths and prevent prescription drug misuse before it starts. That's DEATakeback.com.
The Justin Kinner Show, right here on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you in live here on a Tuesday, the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. All right, wow. So last night, obviously the Dayton Flyers played on Sunday in an exhibition game. As far as the Care Source Classic is concerned, Wright State played last night, and it was just kind of wild taking in some college basketball this weekend with everything going on, college football, the NFL, the World Series matchup is officially set. We're going to talk about that in a moment and what it means. Baseball is like the narrative in baseball. I don't know if the narrative is as real as what we want to make it out to be. You would think the way we talk about baseball is if it's just the same champion every single year, the same three. Baseball, with all the problems that it has, where we say, hey, it's only for a select few teams every single year, it's had, crowned a different champion, 16 different times over the last 20 plus years or whatever. Kind of crazy. We'll talk about that more in a moment. Bengals fans, you'll want to keep it locked in here, even though I'm wearing my Browns hat today. I got a new Browns hat at the Browns game this weekend. So it stood up in the rain, so I'm pretty excited about that. But nonetheless, Bengals fans, you want to keep it locked in here. Even though I'm wearing my Browns hat, I have to admit that I was wrong about something when it comes to your Cincinnati Bengals. I'll have that coming up for you here in just a few moments. But I do want to open up. This is a random topic. It's my ADD at work, and I wanted to mix it up just to kind of throw in a new talking, a new segment here. Just not even a new segment, just a new topic, right? So, and again, welcome in. I'm Justin Kinner, the Justin Kinner Show. Happy to be with you here on a Tuesday. But last night, so Wright State played at UD Arena in the Care Source Classic. They took care of business against Ohio last night. And exhibition games, you could kind of make up your own rules in them a little bit. One of the things that they did last night was and this is most exhibition games, you can't foul out. No players, it doesn't matter how many fouls you pick up, you cannot foul out of a game. And I thought it was weird at first. Then I thought about it. I'm like, I actually don't think it's weird that you can't foul out of a game. I think it's weird that you can foul out of a game. It's always kind of driven me nuts. Like there's a couple things about, that like it's the one sport where you go to where there are rules in place to keep your players, to take your star players off the floor. Why would that even be a thing? I can't stand the concept of players fouling out. I'm not a fan of it whatsoever, especially at times whenever there's a big game and the officials get a little hair up their ass and they decide that they want to make the game about them and they're calling a very ticky-tack game. And your star, the best team sometimes can't win a game because they get in foul trouble early, and it has nothing to do with whether the team was prepared to play or not, whether a player was good to go or not, or anything like that. It drives me nuts. I think that the concept of fouling out is actually probably one of the most ridiculous things in all of sports, if you truly think about it. It got me thinking about it last night. Wright State in an exhibition game last night, UD at UD Arena over the weekend, and players couldn't foul out in these exhibition games. There wasn't really many other changes made to the flow of the game. It just said, hey, you can't foul out of a game. Well, why can't you, when I've asked people, well, why can't you foul out of a game? Well, it's an exhibition game. It's just about, kind of getting loose and prepared for the season. You want to keep guys out there. It's about keeping them out there. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I love that response. I love that answer. But that should be basketball in general. Like that should be how we view it in general. Like we should not have rules that take your stars off the floor. injury, all that stuff. Okay, that's one thing, but like there should not be rules that are implemented into a sport that take your star players off the floor. Not a fan of it. I liked it last night. Now, what do you do in replacement of it? Like, okay, well, you have to be held accountable for fouling in some capacity. I agree. It could just be as simple as, hey, every time you get in foul trouble, or not foul trouble, but if your team accrues an X amount of fouls, you're sending the other team to the free throw line. Now, I get it, pace of play issues, a lot of game stoppages. I get that, but I'd rather deal with a little bit more game stoppages throughout the game with my star players on the floor than less stoppages in play with my star players being taken out. I just thought the concept last night in these exhibition games for players that you cannot foul out in these. I thought about it, and I think that's how it should be. Because what I also saw last night, and what I've seen in these exhibition games, including the Penn State UD game on Sunday, when you don't fear fouling out, you get to be extra aggressive. And I saw that last night. I saw it on Sunday. I saw teams that are aggressive because the players now, you don't want to foul, but you're now not worrying about being taken out of a game because you get in foul trouble. So I would love to see that taken out. It won't happen. It's a random topic. I get it. It's my ADD in full force today. But I was watching that last night. Chris and Jim were on the call. Shout out to them. That was a concept that just kind of sat in my head for the most of the day. In my ADD earlier, I'm like, I just wish they would keep that as a thing. Stop taking your players out. And like I said, a player starts to accrue too many fouls. Now, every time that player commits a foul, all right, it automatically sent, maybe if you're not in the limit yet, but that player's the limit. If that player fouls, coaches might say, hey, we are going to take you out in a late game situation because if you foul them, you will put them at the free throw line versus if he fouls them, we have fouls to give, that type of thing. But I'm just saying, overall, I'm not a fan whatsoever of any kind of rules or penalties that put you in position to have to take your star players out. You go to the game to watch your favorite player and they pick up 2 fouls early. Well, great. We spent all this money on a ticket and now we don't even get to see them until the second half. And then the second half starts. Now that player has to be, he's going to play very timid and hesitant because he doesn't want to continue to get in even more foul trouble. So, you know what I mean? Like, stop taking players out of the game. Stop having rules that punish you by removing your players from the field or from the floor. I mean, it is what it is. I thought that was random. And then I thought about another one, if I'm going to look at football. So if I could change one thing about basketball, if I could take one thing out of basketball, it would be I would eliminate the concept of players fouling out. I'm fine with there being some kind of penalty for continuing to accrue fouls throughout a game. I am not a fan of being taken out of a game. Fans come to games to watch the players. All right. And it's one thing if you go and your player doesn't show up and he's had a bad night, he's not making shots, he's, turning the ball over, having an off night, whatever. At least he's doing that out on the floor. It's another to have your starters not be out there at all because of some stupid foul rule. That's always been a part of basketball. It will not change. I'm just saying I would get rid of that. Football, as far as that's concerned, here's what I would eliminate in football. I would eliminate the extra point. I think the concept of the extra point is the dumbest thing ever. I'm fine with special teams. I'm fine with, kicking field goals. But you bust your ass to score a touchdown. And then, you like the extra. I just don't get why you score a touchdown. It should just be 7 points. Simple as that. Simple as that. I have no clue why we have to bring out a whole other unit of guys, a special teams unit, just to kick a little measly extra point. You score a touchdown, 7 points, off you go. I'd get rid of the extra point in football, and I'd get rid of the rule where you foul out in basketball. I think those are the two dumbest things in those sports right there. My ADD in full force today. I apologize. It is what it is. But we welcome you in again. I'm Justin Kinner, the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM, 937-518-1410. Let me know what you think. Call into the show. We got a ton to talk about. Bengals fans, keep it locked in here. I'm gonna admit that I was wrong about something. We'll discuss that when we come back. It's not me setting you up for anything, I promise. I've had a change of views when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals, if you can't tell over the last couple of days. So we'll get to that coming up around the corner. The Dodgers are ruining baseball, according to everybody. I would say that teams like the Reds ruin baseball more than teams like the Dodgers. We'll discuss more coming up here in a bit as well. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We'll be right back.
Radio.
Justin Kinner back with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. We opened up with honestly, it's just one of those days for me, my ADD taking over, and it was an ADD situation last night. Wright State in exhibition play at UD Arena. They win 63-57 over Ohio out of the MAC, the Bobcats out of the MAC. It's an exhibition game. Who cares, right? I get that. But, exhibition games are happening all over right now. Dayton just played Penn State at UD Arena over the weekend, and they'll have Bowling Green coming up before the season officially gets here. So, it was pretty cool to take in some college basketball this weekend. And as I shared to open the show, the one thing that was the most unique about these exhibition games, and I really don't get it. They, basically before the game started, they just tell you, hey, by the way, all players, there's no foul limits. Like no player will foul out. Everyone just plays through the fouls. And I said, okay, kind of weird. Don't understand the concept of doing that in an exhibition game and just not in a regular season. Or like, why would you do that? I talked to a few people and they said, well, the reason is it's an exhibition game. You're wanting to get your guys out there. You want them to get time out on the floor. And I'm like, well, isn't that the case in every game? I get it. Fouling out's always been a part of basketball. That's how you know basketball. That's how I know basketball. But sometimes there are things in sports and you just kind of sit back, peel it back a bit, and start questioning, well, why do they do it that way? And what do they always tell you? The worst person you could be at work is the person that says, well, we've always done it that way. It took last night for me to kind of realize, like, oh, yeah, I kind of like that. There were some players who were racking up some fouls in the game, but yet they continued playing hard throughout the entire game. They didn't let the fact that they kept piling on fouls. And it's not like they were playing like reckless. It's not like they were a bull in the china shop just out there plowing people over. It was just, okay, I'm not going to foul. I hate that I fouled right there. I don't want to foul. But now I get to continue to play hard. You could still coach the players and say you need to be playing under more control, but the effort was there from both teams the entire night. When you don't have to fear of fouling out, it's amazing the type of effort you get from both sides. I think the concept of players fouling out of a game is ridiculous, the more you think about it. How many times have you paid good money to go to a game that you are looking forward to very much, and the game tips off, and 3 minutes into the game, your favorite player or a very good key contributing player gets in foul trouble, and now they're out, and it totally changes and shifts the dynamic of the game moving forward. Well, that's what I like. That's the strategy involved. I always respect strategy that's involved in sports, but I also want to be entertained. And I think any rule that is putting your sport in a position to take your star players off the floor, I don't see how that's beneficial to anybody. You could still hold players accountable if they keep accruing fouls and it's getting a little out of hand. You could still make it to where it's a problem to have that player out on the floor late in the game. If that player fouls, even if your team's not in the limit, but that player's in the limit. So if that player, fouls again, no matter who it is, if he fouls that individual, that person's going to the free throw line. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, that kid's a little too aggressive when he's out there. We can't afford to put guys at the stripe at this time. So he's a liability. We're going to take him out. If you choose to take him out because of that, fine. But fouling out after 5 fouls is not a lot. You pick up 2 fouls in the first half, you're done. And then you start the second half and you're playing very timid because you don't want to pick up your third very quickly. And then by the time you can start to play aggressive, you're kind of out of rhythm, you're out of your flow, and you're basically, it's just, your night's done. The second you pick up 2 fouls and a half, you're done. Maybe not fouling out, but you're done for the night because it's really hard to stay in any kind of rhythm as far as that's concerned. If I can make one change to basketball for, obviously you have women's basketball is quarters. Forget women's basketball is quarters. Every level of basketball is quarters except for men's college basketball. That's one that I hear a lot of people say that they would change, and I have no problem with that. I would change the rule. I don't want to see players foul out. I saw it last night that, they said, okay, players will not foul out. There's no limits on fouls. Cool. I watched 2 teams that played their asses off the entire time. Not reckless. There's one player that I think is a little reckless, but that's besides the point. I shouldn't say reckless like in a bad way, but like a bull in the china shop. But not every player's out there trying to just take somebody's head off. They're out there playing good, hard, physical basketball, and I think that's what people want to see. I just think anytime you have a rule that takes your players off the floor that fans have paid good money to go see, I think there has to be another way. Shaw said, so no matter how many fouls a guy gets, he could play. Yeah, he could play. You could still put in some kind of, not penalty, but some kind of, okay, you have X amount of fouls now. You've reached that foul level. Every time you foul, that player is going to the line or a player is going to the line. The team may not be in the bonus, but you're in the bonus. There you go. So you're still you're being cognizant to the fact that you're starting to accrue some of these fouls, but you're also not being taken out of the game. I'm tired of every time you go to a big game, never fails. The officials have to find a way to get in the way to impact your viewing experience as far as that goes. Again, not a huge deal. Because of the exhibition game last night that we carried on 1410 ESPN Radio, we carry all Wright State games this season like we have the last couple. I thought it was unique when they said, hey, this exhibition game, no foul limits. And I'm like, that's how it should be. That's how it should be as far as that's concerned. And Shaw says, or you could play defense without fouling. Fouling's going to happen. And I'm not talking about some hothead player that's, trying to be obnoxious and trying to hurt people, whatever. That could be another conversation, but penalizing guys for trying to play hard, I'm just not a big fan of that. And I get it. In football, you have pass interference and other stuff, penalizing guys for playing hard. But imagine if a cornerback, all right, that's his second pass interference call, he has to be taken out of the game. You see how ridiculous it is? You're penalizing guys for trying to make a play at a ball, trying to be aggressive. I'm just not a fan of those types of things. Brian Weaver on Facebook, no fouls in the Hack-a-Shack era would have been, no fouls in the Hack-a-Shack era would have been a disaster. Well, I think a player that can't make free throws, I think that situation's, I didn't say the player, I said that situation is a disaster. I'm with you, but at the same time, it is what it is. I just don't want to see players taken off the floor for fouls, nonetheless. And those of you who are disagreeing with me, and you're entitled to your opinion, that's fine. But you're almost advocating for players to be taken out of games. And that's what for me as a fan of a sport, I want to see more of my players, not less of them. So any rule that is getting in the way of me being able to see more of my players, I'm against that rule right off the bat. I understand the concept of the purpose of fouling out and all this. Find a different way. My whole view on sports has changed thanks to Rob Manfred. Rob Manfred has been so aggressive as the commissioner of baseball with all the changes he has made, changes that I was told by the baseball faithful would never happen. I was told they would never happen because of how stupid the rules are. Well, the rules happened, and not only did they happen, but the rules were not stupid. The rules have actually made baseball as popular today as what it has been in so long. Viewership is up, attendance is up, interest is through the roof, the star players, everything Rob Manfred has done, the aggressive changes he has made to the sport has made it better. I don't want to hear that, well, you can't do that because you can't put a runner on second in extra innings. You can. They did, and it hasn't killed the sport. Well, you can't, you can't put the DH in the National League. You can. They did, and it's worked. Well, you can't have teams play every team in baseball. I mean, that defeats the tradition of the sport. You can. They did, and it worked. You can't tell a pitcher that he has to face 3 batters minimum. I mean, that was the whole strategy of the game. You can't take the strategy out of the game. You can. They did, and it worked. I'll never forget. I had just started in the city doing baseball or doing sports talk, and one of the biggest controversies in baseball at the time was, oh my gosh, they're going to put netting up and down the first and third baseline. And I remember we took so many calls on this from you listeners here in town. You guys were pissed. I'm not going to go to a Dragons game if I'm going to have to sit behind a net. Oh, really? You're not? Okay, well, hey, guess what? I got free tickets from work, and guess what? They're right behind home plate. They're the best seats in the house, right behind home plate. Oh my gosh, yes, I would love those tickets. Oh, you mean the tickets that up until less than 10 years ago was the only spot in the entire ballpark that had a net in front of it, and you have no problem sitting there? Everyone just wants to bitch. You just want to complain. I'm not going to go to a game if I have to sit behind a net. But the most expensive seats in every ballpark up to that point were the only seats behind a net. You know what I mean? Like, people drove me nuts during that stretch. But you can't put netting up and down the third and first base line. You can. They did, and it's worked. You can't get rid of fouling out in basketball. You can. They won't, but it would work. It would keep your players out there. I don't want to spend money to go watch Jokic and then him get in foul trouble and then not get to watch Jokic. By the way, the NBA doesn't need any help with taking their stars off the floor. The NBA, I swear to gosh, I have to say gosh here. I swear to gosh, these NBA players, most of them, Okay. Most of these NBA players, it is like a fetish of theirs to work your ass off in high school and college to get to the NBA just so you don't have to go to work. I don't get it. Imagine busting your ass in high school to get great grades so you can go to a great university. And you go to a great university and you spend a ton of money and you get a great education so that you can get a job that you just don't ever want to do. That's the NBA players. They drive me up the wall. That's why the NBA has just continued to just plummet down my list of interest over the years, because why should I be interested in you when you're not interested in what I want to be interested to tune into? But that's a whole argument. That's besides the point. NBA players, it's a fetish of theirs to find ways to get out of playing. I don't need more rules to put them in position to not play. I'm just saying, it is what it is. Brian Weaver on Facebook. What up, Brian? Says maybe just limit the intentional fouls that after 2 flagrants, and you're out. Yeah. I mean, there's, like I said, there's different layers to the conversation here. Everyone's going to have a different take on it. But for me, you do need to call fouls to stop play, especially to put stoppages out there to keep players from being a little bit too aggressive. You need to have control of the situation. Last night's game, they didn't, no players were fouling out, and players knew they couldn't get fouled out. So they were being extra aggressive. But I like that style of basketball. I like when guys try. This is why, like the NBA, no one likes it because you're watching a bunch of really, really, rich 1%ers of the world who have a dream job not want to play hard. That's why I love college basketball so much, because we are watching guys that will run through a damn brick wall for an opportunity to play, whether it's at the smallest school in Division I college basketball or the biggest school. I love college basketball for that reason. And I love physical basketball. And that's what I saw last night. And I saw it on Sunday, because when players don't have to worry about fouling out, they're going to play hard. And you could say, well, then they're just going to continue to foul because they know they can't be fouled out. Once again, you start to accrue too many fouls. Every time you foul, now you've put your team in a position where the other team goes to the free throw line every time you foul moving forward. And then it's up to the coach if they want to, if you're a liability or not moving out there. It is what it is. It's a random topic. It is what it is. But that's my ADD topic of the day, if you will. Shaw says, no, I'm advocating for the sport being played how it was meant to be played. I don't want to hear how it was meant to be played. Baseball they wasted decades and decades telling us how the sport was supposed to be played. And guess what? They said, hey, I know how it was played, but we got to change how it was supposed to be played so that, people can watch it, whatever. I'm not saying people aren't watching college basketball because of that, but if you want to, you can have any argument you want against my take on this, but don't say, but that's not how the sport's supposed to be played, because baseball was supposed to be played a certain way. And guess what? It's not being played that way. And it's as popular as it has been in decades. But I get it. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. 937-518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. The Dayton Weight Loss Secret Program has successfully helped thousands of people lose 20 to 30 pounds in a month or two. I am one of those thousands of people that lost 20 to 30 pounds right off the bat, of course. To get more information on how you could be one of those thousands of people, all you have to do is schedule your free consultation in person or virtually by calling Dr. Justin and his staff at Dayton Weight Loss Secret today, 937-999-1480, or online at DaytonWeightLossSecret.com. All right. No injections, right? No endless workouts, no prepackaged meals that always look better outside on the box than whenever you open it and warm it up. I'm telling you. And it's not just helping you lose weight. It's resetting your metabolism and putting you in position to be much, not just healthier in regards to how you look, but how you feel. That's been the biggest takeaway for me, is I just feel better. Feel better about how I look, yes, but I feel better, just energy levels and everything else that comes with it. Call Dr. Justin, Dayton Weight Loss Secret today, 937-999-1480. All right, Bengals fans, I'm going to admit something when we come back. I was wrong. I made a mistake about a particular player on your team, and I'll tell you who that player is and what I was wrong about when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live here on a Tuesday. We'll be right back. Justin Kinner back with you here on Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. And just like that, after Monday Night Football action last night, we are 7 weeks in to the season as we currently sit here right now. The Cincinnati Bengals a game out of a playoff spot. They're without Joe Burrow to at least the middle of December. And we'll see what happens as this season continues. But the Bengals right back in it. And they are a 6.5-point favorite at home coming up this Sunday as they welcome in the New York Jets. A big opportunity here for the Bengals, of course, to even their record back up at 500 as they head into the bye week. And if you could head into the bye week at this point and be a 500 team, considering just where it felt like the direction of the Bengals season was going, that's a huge win in itself. This is a humongous weekend for the Cincinnati Bengals because of the opportunity that presented itself. For one, you just got Joe Flacco less than 2 weeks ago. The second they got Joe Flacco, he had only a few days to prepare before they hit the road to take on the Green Bay Packers on the road without really having any true concept or feel of the offense. And then right after that, in a shorter week, you had to turn right back around and go and face the Pittsburgh Steelers. And, when you have that matchup right there, a divisional opponent, again, still trying to get a feel for the offense, Bengals go on to win. Joe Flacco looks great, but there's still a lot that he has to learn when it comes to this offense. And now that was a Thursday night game. And now you have 10 days to prepare for a winless and bad Jets team. And you have to, that's an opportunity right there. For one, that's 10 days of no football, or at least no games, for Joe Flacco to continue to get acclimated with this offense. And if this is what Joe Flacco has looked like without being acclimated to the offense, imagine what it's going to look like when he does get acclimated to the offense. I think Cincinnati is in great shape. They're taking on a Jets team that is 0-7 as we currently sit here right now, 7 weeks, not 8 weeks, 7 weeks into the season. And the Bengals have an opportunity to maybe jump into one of those playoff spots, even the record at 500, and do all of that heading into a bye week to give Joe Flacco even more time. So he gets 10 days between games to prepare, to continue to get acclimated as a Bengal. And then after this upcoming week, he'll get 2 weeks off, or at least 2 weeks, 2 weeks before his next game with the bye week. So I think Cincinnati's in solid shape considering the fact that they're without Joe Burrow. So you're going to have, of course, 10 days to prepare for a winless Jets team. The Bears, who I don't think are anything special, but they are 4-2 right now. I will be fascinated to see what that line looks like when that game approaches, but that won't be, until November 2nd. So nonetheless, I'm sorry, the bye week isn't after the Jets. The bye week is after the Bears, but either way, have the bye week so soon after coming to Cincinnati. And then, you get a win over the Steelers, and then you have 2 winnable games against the Jets and Bears, a bye week, and then you get the Steelers again on the road. Very important stretch coming up for the Cincinnati Bengals. But here's the thing that's interesting to me about Cincinnati as we sit here right now. There was, when Joe Burrow went down in week 2, when he went down in week 2, I said that the Bengals are in trouble because not only is Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. And the Bengals need Joe Burrow to be Joe Burrow to get the most out of their second highest paid player on the team in Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase, statistically, and people thought I was always just ragging on the guy. When the Jets or when the Bengals and Vikings squared off against one another, we talked about Justin Jefferson against Jamar Chase, arguably the top 2 wide receivers in football. But what I said was it is very arguable of who the top wide receiver is. Everyone right away said it was Jamar Chase, and I said absolutely not. It's Justin Jefferson, a guy that averages 85 yards a game and a touchdown a game, no matter who's throwing him the football. And then you have Jamar Chase, whose numbers completely disappear the second that Joe Burrow sneezes and is off the field for a few weeks. That wasn't a hot take. That wasn't, Kinner's being a Bengals hater. The numbers back that up. Up until this season, there were 7 games that Jamar Chase played with the Cincinnati Bengals in which Joe Burrow was not out there. And in those games, he averaged 50 yards a game and no touchdowns. He had, I shouldn't say no touchdowns. He had 1 touchdown in 7 games without Joe Burrow. All right. He averaged 50 yards a game, under 50 yards a game in those same 7 games. He completely fell off a cliff. His production disappeared. He was so dependent on Joe Burrow. And I said, because of that, I can't say he's the best wide receiver in football. He looks like the best wide receiver in football when Joe Burrow is throwing him the ball. But when he's not throwing him the ball, Jamar Chase, his production disappears. Not a hot take, statistically accurate. Justin Jefferson, when you look at the names that he has played for, some like whether it's Nick Mullins and just a bunch of names you've never heard of, he puts up numbers no matter who's throwing him the football. Well, that has changed this season. And I shouldn't say it changed the season because technically I wasn't wrong about Jamar Chase because Jamar Chase, the way he started to produce in the weeks after Joe Burrow's injury, I was accurate. I was right. If you look at the first two games, so whenever Joe Burrow goes out and he's injured against Jacksonville, the next 2 weeks, all right, Jamar Chase had 5 catches for 50 yards, no touchdowns. And the week after, 5 catches for 23 yards and no touchdowns. So that's why I was so adamant that Justin Jefferson is the best wide receiver in football, because it doesn't matter who's throwing him the football. Jamar Chase is a very dependent wide receiver when it comes to that. But I may have been wrong because over the last couple of weeks, he's played, for 3 different quarterbacks this year. And statistically, I mean, there's not a wide receiver that's really doing more than him right now. After 7 weeks, Jamar Chase, he's first in the NFL in receptions. He's first in targets. He's second in receiving yards, and he's third in yards after the catch. The fact that he is second in receiving yards when he basically disappeared for 3 weeks is pretty fascinating. And not 3 weeks, 4 weeks, because he did not contribute at all in week 1 because no one in the offense contributed in week 1 against the Browns. He had 2 catches. He had 2 catches in week 1 for 26 yards and no touchdowns. He was god-awful against Cleveland, god-awful against Minnesota, god-awful against Denver. He had 3 god-awful games. But, man, when he's on, he's on. He already has 2 games this year of 160 yards or more. All right, he has 5 touchdowns on the season, and that's with 3 games where he disappeared. So, technically, if you look at this, in 4 games, he has 2 games of 160 yards or more. He has 3 of those 4 games of 110 yards or more. And a touchdown in all of those. He had 2 touchdowns against Detroit, a touchdown against Green Bay, and, of course, a big one against Pittsburgh when he had that record-breaking performance against the Steelers, 16 catches, 23 targets, 161 yards. He averaged 10 yards a catch and a touchdown. Jamar Chase has just been unbelievable. And this is what you want. My concern about paying Jamar Chase that type of money is you're paying a guy that is dependent on your highest paid player is Joe Burrow. Your second highest paid player is your wide receiver in Jamar Chase, and you're paying so much to a guy that is dependent on the other guy. Now I'm starting to question who's more dependent on whom. Is Jamar Chase more dependent on Joe Burrow, or is Joe Burrow more dependent on Jamar Chase? And statistically, Jamar Chase is starting to prove that, okay, whether it's Joe Flacco, whether it was Jake Browning, whether it's Joe Burrow, I'm going to go out there and do my thing. We know what Jamar Chase could do with Joe Burrow. 6 catches, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns in a game against Detroit with Jake Browning throwing him the football. And then you look at the fact that, of course, he's almost had 250 yards, 2 touchdowns on 26 catches over the last 2 games with Joe Flacco throwing him the ball. And that's really within a game and a half, because in the first half against Green Bay, it was just about getting Joe Flacco acclimated to that offense. So I'm willing to admit, okay, maybe I was a little too aggressive, too critical of Jamar Chase, because the guy's been phenomenal. He's been absolutely phenomenal, and especially because you think about the 3 games that he's been atrocious. I mean, to have a game of 23 yards, 26 yards, 50 yards, no touchdowns. I mean, those are 3 games that could literally have him statistically ranked in the middle or the bottom of the league. And even with those, he's right there at the top 3 in every major statistical category. And the bottom line is, you saw it against the Steelers. You know the Bengals game plan. Now, this could either work for or against him. It could work for him because you know they're going to go to Jamar Chase, and apparently teams just can't stop it. Or it's going to work against him, and teams are going to, jump, on a lot of this stuff and put the Bengals in a bad situation. But Joe Flacco is too smart of a quarterback. Jamar Chase too talented of a wide receiver. You have T. Higgins. They have enough on this offensive side of the ball to continue this stretch of keeping them in the playoff conversation. So, Bengals fans, I was wrong about Jamar Chase. But statistically at the time, it did support my theory that he was so dependent on Joe Burrow. I mean, there was 9 games without Joe Burrow, he averaged under 50 yards a game. 9 games without Joe Burrow, he had 1 touchdown. That's not good. But then all of a sudden the light has kind of switched on. Now, Joe Flacco is an NFL starting caliber quarterback. That has a lot to do with it as well. Some of my criticisms are Jamar Chase, with how much he's being paid, he needs to elevate talent. And this is, I mean, if Jamar Chase should be in the MVP conversation, if the Bengals remain in the playoff race and he continues to have these 110, 120, 160-yard multi-touchdown performances throughout the season, I know a wide receiver will never win MVP, but he needs to be in the MVP conversation. If the Bengals remain in the hunt with that bad defense, their inability to run the football, and a bad offensive line, if they remain in the hunt because of the offense and it's not Joe Burrow throwing him the football and they're still humming along, that to me, Jamar Chase should be in the MVP conversation. He won't win it by any means. And it's very premature to say that right now as we sit here on October 21st. But the bottom line is, if this continues, if the Bengals' success continues, and I expect him to have, I'm excited to see what he does against. Now, the Jets' defense is good. The Jets' defense is way better than the Steelers' defense. So we'll kind of get a good feel for, okay, is Joe Flacco's offense really this juggernaut that it was with Joe Burrow, or was it just taking advantage of a very bad defensive unit in Pittsburgh? We'll find that out against the Jets coming up on Sunday. But I have no complaints about Jamar Chase. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He's been exactly what the Bengals have needed. You needed your stars to step up in Joe Burrow's absence. It was the only way they were going to have a chance. And I thought it was bad leadership of Jamar Chase at first, because when Joe Burrow went away, so did Jamar Chase. When you lose your starting quarterback, you can't lose your wide receiver as well. And that was my concern, because when they lost Joe Burrow, you basically lost Jamar Chase because his production disappears. But that doesn't seem to be the case as of late. And we'll see if they can continue it as far as that goes. All right, I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We'll talk college football coming up here in hour number 2, coming up around the corner. Ohio State, where do they fall amongst the national championship odds? How heavy of a favorite are the Buckeyes? And are they your favorite to win the national championship? We'll get to all of that. OHSAA, by the way, we have an update about Jameer Brown, the star player over at Wayne, who was suing him and his family and his representatives suing the OHSAA. Finally, the OHSAA did release a statement. Tim Streed, Director of Media Relations, and Doug Ute, the Executive Director of the OHSAA. This statement was released about a half hour ago. Here it is. So, in a response to a lawsuit, and this is my favorite thing right here, they don't call him by name. In response to a lawsuit filed by a student athlete on October 15th against the Ohio High School Athletic Association regarding name, image, and likeness. I like the fact that it's regarding name, image, and likeness when they refuse to use his name in the write-up here. But no, in response to a lawsuit filed by a student athlete on October 15th against the Ohio High School Athletic Association regarding NIL, a Franklin County judge opened the case on Monday by issuing a 45-day temporary restraining order against the OHSAA. Now, this 45-day temporary restraining order, it does prevent the OHSAA from enforcing its bylaw that prohibits a student athlete from being compensated for his or her name, image, and likeness. The OHSAA Executive Director, Doug Ute, he did announce that an emergency referendum vote regarding NIL will go to member schools sometime during this 45-day window. The OHSAA Board of Directors, they are going to meet on Thursday, October 23rd. Okay, they're going to meet on Thursday, and they're going to determine the voting dates. Each OHSAA member high school has one vote, and that'll be casted by the principal. So here's the thing. Here's what I don't get about this, and you probably will have the answer, and I'll just look dumb and sound dumb on the radio. It's just another day. So, okay, the Brown family is suing the OHSAA over this. They're lifting they're putting the temporary restraining order, 45-day temporary restraining order up. So therefore, there are no rules when it comes to NIL for the next 45 days. So Brown and any other student athlete can go out and make money off NIL for the next 45 days in that window, and maybe even more than that if, depending on the outcome of this vote. But what if these votes all come back like they did last time when, the bylaws and the way it was written within the OHSAA bylaws was all put together based on how all these schools felt to begin with. So now we're going to re-vote for this. And if the schools decline it and enough votes come in and they don't change the rule, does that still leave the OHSAA open to a lawsuit? Can't this game just continue on and on and on? Just a different player will then step up and sue the OHSAA, and then there'll be another 45-day, again, I don't understand how any of this works, and it just seems like it's going to be a huge headache for the OHSAA. It almost feels like It's going to happen. You're not, by the way, once that, the restraining order is put up, you're not putting that toothpaste back in the tube. You're not putting the genie back in the bottle. So I don't see how this is going to change moving forward. They're almost making it more bumpy moving forward, trying to get in the way of this. It's going to happen. And to me, I wish they would spend more time on trying to find ways to make this work than trying to find ways to shut this down. Think of all the energy that's being put into trying to stop a train that's coming with no brakes. I'm not going to compare the OHSAA to the NCAA, but at the same time, we have all, as sports fans at the college level, have been watching the NCAA stand on a train track, knowing that the train is coming right at them, knowing that the train would not stop, knowing that the train doesn't have brakes, knowing that they were going to get run the F over, and yet they did nothing to prepare for it, and it blew up in their face, and that's why everything looks like hell right now. The OHSAA needs to find a way to not do and make the same mistake. You're on the tracks, OHSAA. You hear the train coming. You know it has no brakes. So step off the tracks, let the train go by, and let's make everyone's life a lot simpler and easier with this. The same energy that you're using to find a way to keep it from working, something that you know is going to happen no matter what, use the same time and energy and resources to find a way to make it work. There has to be a way out there, because now you've already lost this, because that restraining order, basically you've lost already to begin with. I understand both sides to this. We talked about this whenever the news first broke a week ago. I was like, I get both sides to this. I understand any student athlete's frustration with not being able to go out and make money off of their own name, image, and likeness. But I also see the conflict in that and how it creates problems and it blurs the lines for the rules and the bylaws of the OHSA. I get both sides. I get the dark side of what's about to happen, as far as, we know what NIL was intended to be for college. It was supposed to be, hi, I'm Justin Kinner with such and such basketball team, and I'm here to tell you about my friends at such and such card shop or such and such car dealership, or such and such, Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken, whatever. That's what NIL was supposed to be about. And what it's turned into is, hey, we have a bag of $3 billion waiting for you when you get here if you come play for our school. That's the stuff that's going to happen if they don't find a way to allow this to be an enjoyable experience. By the way, I think that this should be an enjoyable experience. Youth sports, what it does for the community, high school sports, what it does for the community, to be able to see your local high school stars, be a part of, community businesses and help. And by the way, these names are only going to help your local businesses as far as that's concerned. And you're putting money in the pockets of the high schoolers for all the hard work that they've done. I have no problem with this. But what I want it done a certain way. I want it done in a way that's going to be effective and fruitful for all sides and it not be a war. Right now, I feel like it's the players versus the NCAA. I don't want to feel like it's the players against the OHSAA. And I feel like that's where this is trending, and that's the unfortunate part. Stop spending so much time trying to prevent something that's inevitable from happening, and start using all this time, using every single ounce of energy and resources of finding a way to make it work, because it's going to happen. And the only way that this blows up and turns into a problem is going to be if the OHSA doesn't handle this correctly, as far as accepting the fact that it's going to happen and making it a smooth transition. Who knows? But we know nothing ever works the way we want it to, as far as that goes. But either way, I'm Justin Kinner with you here at the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Titan Graphics is the Miami Valley's choice for custom screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional products. Place your order today at Titan Graphics. If you are a coach, if you are a business owner, work in HR, whatever your business title is, and you're responsible for providing, T-shirts or any kind of promotional items or what have you, give Titan Graphics a call today. They take care of all of our promotional items, from our pens to wristbands to the koozies to the signage, everything that we use here at Connoisseur Media, 1410 ESPN Radio, Z93, everything. All of that is done through our partners over at Titan Graphics. So please give them a call today and help support a local business that supports us in Titan Graphics. The Titan Graphics is the Miami Valley's choice for custom screen printing, embroidery, laser engraving, and promotional products. Place your order today at Titan Graphics. All right. We'll be right back. Plenty more to get into. We'll talk some college football. The Buckeyes are national championship favorites, according to the Vegas odds makers. But are they your national championship favorites? How much of a lock are the Buckeyes as far as the favorites to win the national title? We'll get to all of that when we come back. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. The Justin Kinner Show with you here, Dayton's ESPN Radio 1410 Wing AM. So the World Series is officially set. The Dodgers and the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays win Game 7 last night over the Mariners to punch their ticket to the World Series. And we'll see the Dodgers at the Blue Jays coming up on Friday, October 24th. So this Friday, Dodgers, Blue Jays, Game 1 of the 2025 World Series. It says tickets are as low as $1,000. How about that? Tickets are as low as $1,000. That's pretty fascinating. Nonetheless, I mean, it's about what you'd expect. It is crazy too. And this, everyone, it's more expensive to go to a World Series game in Toronto than it is in Los Angeles. Now, it's because this is the second straight year where the Dodgers are in the World Series. It's probably not going to be the last one either for any time soon. So the Dodgers, I think it's a lot of, hey, this is special, but, we're not going to dump everything to go to a Dodgers game because there's so much to do in LA. This is a big deal in Toronto. It's a big deal in LA, but it's a even bigger deal in Toronto when it comes to what this series means. I've seen a lot of people, we talk a lot of NFL on this show, and, Baker Mayfield leaves Cleveland to go have success elsewhere. And that's painful, especially in the midst of the struggles of the Cleveland Browns at that particular position. Joe Flacco, although not a true Cleveland Brown, he did come and help Cleveland. He got off the couch. They signed him and passed the halfway point of the middle of the season. And they go on a big win streak, and he leads into the postseason. It was a hell of a memory for Browns fans. It was a great memory. Things didn't go as well the second time around. He leaves, and now he's having all this success over in Cincinnati. And I shouldn't say all this success. It's been one game, but it proves he had a lot left in the tank, and they weren't getting that out of him over in Cleveland. But it's not just the football team that lets really talented individuals just walk out the door, and then they go on to have success elsewhere. I got a kick out of this that there are a lot of former Cleveland Guardians in this World Series, and not just in this World Series. On one side of this, they're on the Blue Jays. It's the Toronto Guardians is basically what this is. But obviously, Ernie Clement and Shane Bieber. You have Jimenez, Santander, Miles Straw. That's a handful of big-time contributors on the Blue Jays roster that at one point were Cleveland Guardians, and they just let those individuals go. And so I see the irony as far as that goes, nonetheless, especially because it is Cleveland. But that has to be painful. It is cool in recent years when we've seen players that we were fans of in Cincinnati go on to have success and win a World Series elsewhere. We were really hoping, I was pulling to see Joey Votto go to a place where he could have success. And, it would have been interesting. It would have been kind of cool to see, after as long as Joey Votto spent in the major leagues, to go to Toronto and be a part of this. He was part of the Blue Jays last year. He obviously didn't make the team. He was cut obviously early on in the season, but man, oh man, how close that would have been. But that's Joey Votto's fault. He was content with losing in Cincinnati. That's my hot take for the day. I've been cool, calm, and collected as of late, but I will not back down on my Joey Votto take. He was content with losing. He never once threatened the organization to trade him to a contender or, either get good players and we need to start winning games or I'm out of here. He was just content. Like it drove me nuts. I don't mind when players throw temper tantrums when their team's losing. People that I hated Myles Garrett last year or over the offseason because he wanted out. I'm like, I don't blame him. I don't blame him. Telling the front office, get your blank together or get me out of here. He obviously took the money, but Cleveland also had a very, very good draft, and they're trying to dig themselves out of the QB hell that they put themselves in. Bottom line is we see players do that all the time. If the Bengals continue to lose, don't act like at some point Joe Burrow is not going to sit there and say, all right, I need to accomplish, my ultimate goal of winning a Super Bowl. If I can't do it here, you need to get me somewhere where I can. If you're not going to help me do it, then, so be it. But that's besides the point. I want to talk about the World Series. We're going to get to college football in a moment. I know I said we'd get to it next, but as far as today's show, we were supposed to have Jason Fitz on. He is going to be on tomorrow's show in the scheduling conflict, so we're going to move him to tomorrow. And we'll have more college football on the docket for tomorrow as well. But I see so many people, like baseball is such a weird sport. It's such a weird sport because there's so many things about it that should lead to certain narratives being accurate and being true. And they're just not. People bring up the fact that the Dodgers obviously have the highest payroll in baseball. The Blue Jays have the 5th highest payroll in baseball. Last year in the World Series, of course, it was another. I mean, this is the 3rd straight year where we've had a World Series where the two teams have the top 5 highest payrolls in baseball. Now, how many more times do we have to see that before we believe that you have to buy your way to the World Series? Because when you use those select talking points, it sounds like, man, the Reds need to spend at least $250 million to have a chance to get to the World Series. But if it's that simple, if it's that cut and dry, then why is it that Major League Baseball has had 16 different champions since the year 2000? You would think the way we talk about baseball, about how much of a problem that it has, is that, man, the Yankees and the Dodgers and the Mets and the Blue Jays and teams like that they are ruining baseball. You would think that there's only 2 or 3 teams that ever win a World Series. And that's not the case. This is the closest. I mean, I guess the Astros they had dynasty qualities. All right, they were there every year. They were in the mix every year, but I don't know if I would have considered. Would you guys consider the Astros a dynasty? I'm curious. Put it in the comment section. I don't know if I would. I think they were a fringe dynasty. I think they had I think they were right there. But the Dodgers are back in the World Series for the 2nd straight year. They were the odds-on favorite to get to the World Series and win it last year, and they did it. Same thing this year. They're right back there, and they potentially will do it again. This is a dynasty. The Dodgers are a dynasty. And if the Dodgers go on to dominate baseball the next 2, 3, 4 years and are constantly there, then yes, I think that narrative is very accurate. But the fact that baseball since the year 2000 has had 16 different MLB champions, that is the most of any other sport out there in that same time frame. In fact, Major League Baseball not only does it not have a parity problem, it doesn't have a parity problem at all. Like 16 different champions since 2000. The NBA has only had 12 franchises. 12 different franchises have won an NBA title since 2000. The majority of those, of course, are the Lakers, the Spurs, the Golden State Warriors, the Miami Heat have 2. Right, and right now the NBA is in the midst of a streak where it's a different champion every year for the last 7 years. But Major League Baseball and the NBA, we talk about the NFL as if it's the most parity-driven league in sports. It's not. The difference is the NFL, almost every franchise, I would say more than 75% of the fan bases heading into every season feel like they have a shot to get there. The results say otherwise. Baseball, we never feel like, as a Reds fan, I never feel like the Reds have a chance to get to the World Series. But statistically, they have as good a chance to get to the World Series as a professional baseball team than any other team in other professional sports. As Browns and Bengals fans, since 2000, we're talking 25 years, only 13 different teams have gotten there. They're the least parity-driven sport in sports out there. You know what I mean? The NHL is 14, the NBA has 13, the NFL has 12. I mean, that's insane to me that football is the least parity driven of all the sports out there, because we have the perception that it has the most parity and it has the least parity in sports. The NBA has become the second most parity driven sport out there, and Major League Baseball is the most. 16 in 25 years. 16 champions have been crowned in that time frame. That's pretty wild. Adam Seldner, he chimed in. The Astros were not a dynasty. I agree. I found them fascinating. I mean, especially because of the cheating scandal and everything that went into that. The fact that you get Dusty Baker, who comes in, a different manager, and leads them to a World Series and that type of, you know what I mean? Like, I found them fascinating. I don't know if I would put them in that dynasty category. As far as that's concerned. Adam also said, don't forget Celtics talking NBA, championships and stuff like that. Yeah. Ron Howard says, no salary cap, money wins. Listen, this is my problem with all of this right here, is that, yes, this is back-to-back years where we have seen the World Series matchup be between 2 of the top 5 highest paid, payrolls in baseball. But the other numbers tell you a different story. that baseball is the most parity-driven sport out there. As dumb as that sounds, the numbers don't lie. Yes, it's back-to-back years where two teams in the top, with the two of the highest top 5 payrolls in baseball. I can't speak today. It's a good thing I do this for a living. Yes, I get it. It's the second straight World Series where the matchup features two teams who have two of the highest, payrolls in baseball. I completely get that. But since 2016, different franchises have won a World Series. That is more than any other sport out there. I don't know what the right narrative is. I have no clue. I don't know. Does baseball have a parity problem or does it not? Your thoughts. 937-518-1410. I want to step away for a few minutes because I am curious your guys' thoughts. Does baseball have a parity problem? Because I understand why everyone believes that it does. I don't think it does. I don't think baseball has a parity problem. I think that there's a lot of teams that have an opportunity. In fact, if you look at it, if the Reds were the worst team to make the playoffs this year, and had the Mets done what they were supposed to and stayed healthy and actually got that final playoff spot, you could have made an argument for any team that made the playoffs to be World Series, to win the World Series. I could have seen the Brewers doing it, who were considered the best team in baseball for good chunks of time throughout the year. The Cubs visually, I could see them doing it. Had the Mets snuck into the playoffs with all that talent that they have, it wouldn't have shocked me to see them do it. How many playoff fields can you look at and say more than 75% of the teams have an actual realistic chance at winning it all? I don't think baseball has a parity issue at all. I think it has the most parity of any sport out there. So why are we talking about it as if it's broken? They have crowned more different champions than any other sport since 2000, right? Ratings are through the roof, attendance through the roof, social media engagement and interaction through the roof. And you're trying to convince me that the sport is broken? How? It's not adding up. You would think that nobody's watching baseball anymore. You would think that nobody's going to the games. You would think that it's the NBA with the way people talk about how bad baseball is. The NBA would kill to be the Major League Baseball right now. I think MLB is healthier than the NBA. I think there is more parity. I do. If a team like we'll continue with this conversation when we come back. 937-518-1410. Do you believe that baseball has a parity issue? We'll discuss and continue on with this when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Baseball needs fixing. The sport is broken. We're going to have a major lockout in 2027 because the sport is just so broken. Well, just like anything in life, nothing's perfect. I don't think Major League Baseball is broken. And I don't know how much more it needs fixed. At least not in regards to what people are saying needs to be fixed when it comes to baseball. People are mad at the Dodgers. People are mad at the Dodgers. People are they're saying that they're ruining baseball. People was mad at Dave Roberts, the manager for the Dodgers, who said basically, hey, they say we're ruining baseball. Well, let's go ruin it even more, and let's go win 4 more games. Basically leaning into the evil empire mantra that is now being put on them. They're the modern day Yankees, right? Because it was a lot of jealousy from people back in the day when the Yankees were dominating the sport. And it was, when you created the evil empire, that little nickname and chalking up all their success to just spending money, it was done to water down the success because it was easier to knock them down verbally and childishly than skillfully out on the field because you just didn't have enough good players or weren't willing to spend to go get enough good players. I just don't think that the sport is broken. I don't think that the Dodgers are ruining baseball. I used to be in that category, but I have shifted my mindset over the years because it's funny. We're going to sit here and we bitch and complain about our team constantly, refusing to spend money, refusing to go add big major, superstar players to the roster, refusing to invest into the roster, to let players like Luis Castillo go. The Reds had Johnny Cueto. They just let him go, just refusing to to secure pay and draft, develop, and free agency to invest into the roster. The Reds refuse to do it consistently to where they're a consistent contender. We rip our team constantly because of their unwillingness to invest into their franchise. So if we are mad that our franchise won't do that, why are we going to look at the face of doing that and tell them that they're ruining baseball? Man, I wish the Reds would go spend billions of dollars on players. I wish my team would do that. Oh, the Dodgers are doing it? They're ruining baseball. Man, I wish the Reds could have got Shohei Ohtani. That would be awesome. Oh, the Dodgers got Shohei Ohtani? They're ruining baseball. It sounds to me like there's one team that's doing everything that you as a fan would love your team to do, but because your team's not doing it, we're going to blame them. It sounds to me, and I'm a diehard Reds fan, it sounds to me, guys and gals, that our team is more of a problem and that our team is killing baseball, not that team, not the Dodgers, not the team that, oh man, we have a super competitive drive and we want to win every year and we're going to spend every dollar we have to make sure that it happens. Those are the bad guys? I mean, I can't wait for Phil Castellini's sushi bar update to steal a line and phrase from my former co-host Mark Schlemmer, RIP. These guys are businessmen in regard. They're businessmen who like baseball, not businessmen who love baseball. Because the Dodgers, they're businessmen who have the money up front, but they also love the sport, which is why they do what they do. The Reds are an investment. The Dodgers are a passion. The Reds are a hobby. The Dodgers are a lifestyle. Don't get mad at the Dodgers. I'm so sick of hearing people blame the Dodgers, saying that they're killing baseball. Oh, another World Series of two teams who have two of the highest payrolls in all of baseball going head-to-head. This sport is broken. This sport is actually far from broken. Baseball is a beautiful sport. Baseball has fixed and wrong. It's fixed a lot of its wrongs. It's righted a lot of its wrongs. Baseball is thriving right now. This is the healthiest that baseball has been in quite some time. And yet there are people out there screaming, oh no, this sport it's headed towards a lockout here in a few years. The ratings have never been better. Attendance, and when I say better, like, I mean, this sport, I mean, if you think back to the steroid era and the fallout from that, the sport took a major hit. It never bounced back. There were never any other big stars. And what stars that did come, we always looked at them side-eyed like, are you cheating on steroids too? Like, it really did have a ripple effect as far as how the sport was perceived, and it just it ruined it all. It ruined it all. Now, with all the rule changes, with the youth movement in the sport and the stars and the marketability of these stars and Rob Manfred not, being pressured by the old heads in baseball that said, well, it's always been this way. Baseball is the face of what you are told as an employee. Don't ever be that person. Don't ever be well, we've always done it this way. That was what baseball was for the longest time. And once they stopped being well, we've always done it this way crowd, baseball's thriving again. Baseball has quirks like every sport does. The NFL is king, but it's not perfect. So to expect baseball to be perfect is kind of silly. But I do know this. Since 2000, no sport has crowned more champions than baseball as far as more variety of champions. 16 different franchises have won a World Series since the year 2000. That's more than any other sport out there. That's more than any other sport out there. They're also the only league with no repeat champion in the last 25 years as well. And I get that that's probably that streak's about to come to an end. But to go 25 years without a repeat champion, that screams parity. 16 different champions in 25 years, that screams parity. Like, I don't know what else you want me to say outside of maybe you're wrong, this sport's not broken. In fact, it's thriving right now. Major League Baseball is the most parity of any professional sport out there over the last 25 years. But yet, we're going to have a lockout because the sport's broken? I don't, and by the way, everyone out there, because it needs a salary cap, I don't think a salary cap is the problem. I don't think it's that teams are spending too much. I don't think there's too many teams that are spending too much. I think there's too many teams that aren't spending at all. Like, everyone's like, the Dodgers are the problem with baseball. I think that the Blue Jays are, but hear me out. The Blue Jays aren't a problem for baseball. But when you look at their roster, 6 players on the Blue Jays roster are players that the Guardians were too cheap to sign and extend and keep. So when I say the Blue Jays are bad for baseball, it's not really the Blue Jays, but it's just what that roster signals. That roster signals, the Guardians, the Guardians should be taking on the Dodgers. The Guardians were a playoff team without those guys, but they have half the puzzle down. Like, they are a very good organization when it comes to drafting and developing, but they don't reward you. You know what I mean? Like, they don't reward you for developing into a star player. They just let you go. Hell, Ramirez got an extension, but he gave them a discount like an idiot, and they didn't follow through with what they told them they were going to do. Hey, if you take a discount, we're going to use the money we saved to invest into the roster, and they didn't do that, and that's why he called them out not even 2 weeks ago. As far as I'm concerned, baseball's not broken. We've talked about it. The playoff ratings are through the roof. The regular season ratings were through the roof. Attendance through the roof. It's Shohei Ohtani. The sport right now arguably has its new Michael Jordan. It has its new face of the sport. I mean, Shohei Ohtani is, 10 strike. He struck out 10 batters and had 3. When he was on the mound, he struck out 10 batters. A dominant pitching performance that we would be talking about even if he wasn't a hitter. But then with 10 strikeouts in a game as a pitcher and then to hit 3 home runs in that same game as a hitter. Tell me again how this sport is broken. It has some of the biggest names in the history of the sport, parity-driven, ratings, attendance, everything. Tell me more how this sport is broken. It's not. Baseball's fine. It's healthy. It'll continue to be fine and healthy moving forward. It is what it is. All right, I'm Justin Kinner with you here, 1410 ESPN Radio, Game 1 of the World Series coming up on Friday night. Friday night, October 24th, the Dodgers at Toronto, 8 o'clock on Fox. That is Game 1 of the World Series, so there you go. There you go. All right, good stuff. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll step away for a few moments, and we'll pick up with the conversation that we had to open up the show. Last night, exhibition play. Again, we're Dayton's radio home for Wright State basketball, by the way. And Wright State, they took on Ohio. The Bobcats out of the MAC at UD Arena as one of the 3 CareSource Invitational games at UD Arena. It started with Penn State and Dayton on Sunday. And then I think it was, you saw Northern Kentucky in action in the game before Wright State and Ohio last night. But one unique thing about those was the fact that, about these exhibition games, there's no foul limits. You can't foul out of these games. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching players continue to be physical all game long without fear of being taken out because of foul trouble. It's the only sport that has penalties in place to remove you from a game. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. We discussed that, and we still got some college football stuff to dive into as well. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers, Dayton's ESPN Radio, 1410 Wing AM. We'll be right back.